The front line is combat at its most brutal. It drives people to extreme acts for many complex reasons.
They were fighting for each other, not for patriotism, but for their buddies.
We reveal the most decisive front lines in the Second World War and take you deep into the heart of battle with the men who were there.
They were attacking with divisions, and I had one rifle company with about 100 men.
I was down to my last box of ammunition. We had no food, and we were hurting.
Iwo Gima, 1945, a tiny island in the Pacific, and the biggest Marine Corps battle ever.
When we landed on the beach, it was absolute chaos.
But the war's most iconic image overshadows combat in its most intense form.
I strapped on a flamethrower and went to work.
And the horrendous losses compel the Americans to relearn the art of war. As the brilliant Japanese commander outmaneuvers his enemy.
General Kurabayashi figured out that defending the beach was actually a critical mistake.
Iwo Jima's brutal, relentless front line stands as an enduring symbol of sacrifice and courage.
That's where I lost the best friend I've ever had in my life.
Eyewitnesses called it a nightmare in hell when the brutal fight for Iwo Jima begins in February 1945. A quarter of all the US Marines killed in the Second World War will die on this speck of land in the Pacific.
It's a shock to the system for Americans, the unrelenting level of casualties.
They only understand over time that Iwo Jima itself is also the enemy. In Japanese, it means Sulphur Island. Pear-shaped, it's 8,000 meters long and covers 20 square kilometers. Dominated by the dormant volcano Mount Suribachi. So why does Iwo Jima become the graveyard for more than 24,000 men? By late 1944, the Japanese are in retreat. Their once proud fleet is virtually destroyed in history's largest naval battle at Leyte Gulf in October. With the Allies now in total control of the air and oceans, General MacArthur returns to liberate the Philippines, while the US Marines have paid a terrible price storming tiny islands such as Saipan and Guam. Iwo Jima is their next step towards Japan. But above and below ground, it has been turned into a stronghold, where the front line will witness new levels of carnage.
The Marines have to attack the Japanese defenders head-on. They have no choice. Because Iwo Jima is an island, they can't sneak around the back, they can't come in from the side. They have to attack from the front over and over and over again. And that leads to mass slaughter on both sides.
But they forgot to tell the Marines tasked with this seemingly impossible mission what lies ahead.
So nobody could imagine that it was going to take that long, to take 36 days to take that little piece of rock. And we didn't have any intelligence about the rock at all.
By February 1945, they're confident that about 70,000 Marines will overwhelm around 21,000 defenders. Iwo Jima sits mid-ocean between the Mariana Islands and Japan. The US Pacific strategy now depends on huge B-29 bombers from the Marianas, flying an extraordinary 2,600 kilometers to cripple Japan's war economy. But Iwo Jima can warm the defenses, increasing American casualties.
So we were losing B-29s and highly skilled Americans. We couldn't protect them, and we had no way of rescuing them. So they told me that's why we had to take Iwo Jima.
By early 1945, Iwo Jima is strategically crucial to the Americans because an airstrip at Iwo Jima could serve as a useful emergency landing strip for those B-29s.
Potentially saving many American lives. But various US delays play into the hands of the Japanese. From May 1944, Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi transforms the defenses, using miners and engineers, as well as hundreds of artillery pieces. His strategy is to inflict as many casualties as he can and sap America's will to fight on.
Life on Iwo Jima wasn't bad in the beginning. We had control of the air and sea, so it was a pleasant, peaceful place.
Iwo Jima is actually considered part of the Japanese home territory. And because of that, it's very strategically and psychologically important to the Japanese.
They vow to fight until the last man is dead.
We must kill 10 of the enemy before giving up our own lives.
The key thing to remember about General Kuribayashi is that he had a chance to study the tactics that had worked, study the defensive tactics that hadn't worked, and he fed all of that into his defense of Iwo Jima.
The Americans are equally determined to avoid the previous horrendous casualty tolls, with careful planning and months of softening up. From August 1944, massive Air Force bombing raids start, enhanced in December by shelling from US Navy cruisers. By the end of January 1945, Iwo Jima has been hit by 72 days of sustained airstrikes to prepare the ground for a mass amphibious assault by 2 divisions of Marines.
When we boarded the ship, they brought out a board that had a diagram on it that outlined the looks of Iwo Jima, and that's where we first learned where we were going and the name of it.
The big gun battleships and carrier aircraft start a targeted bombardment of the beach defenses. The Marines demand 10 days, but the Navy only agrees to 3, causing huge resentment that only deepens as poor weather severely hinders accuracy.
I could not forget the sight of dead Marines who had died assaulting defenses which should have been taken out by naval gunfire.
The bombardment seems devastating, but the Navy refuses to accept they are essentially firing blind.
You need a forward observer who can see the target, who can correct the fire or the bombing to have real effect. The kind of blind firing and blind bombing that they were doing before the troops landed doesn't really work all that effectively.
Waves of carrier airstrikes increase the intensity as the big warships close in. Protected underground, the defenders are extremely well motivated, but sometimes poorly equipped. Ensign Omagari commands 60 men, but only has 20 rifles and 2 small mortars.
I pondered how I would meet my end. Iwo Jima will be our tomb.
Rather than their dull, regular rations, the Marines are fed steak and eggs, a treat only served on the eve of battle.
The Americans believed that the main danger point was the moment that the troops came ashore at the beach. And so they worked all of their tactics and strategy to try and make that moment as overwhelmingly in their favor as possible.
If you are a Marine waiting to attack the shores of Iwo Gima, it just gives you a bit of a morale boost to see that the Navy is doing its bit and you see huge explosions on the island.
The 5th Marine Division will land on the left by Mount Suribachi, and 4th Division on the right, confronting the 1st Airfield and Quarry Cliffs. The Navy unleashes the heaviest shore bombardment of the whole Pacific War. Waves of landing craft set off as squadrons of carrier strike aircraft hit the beach and Mount Suribachi's defenses. The first waves of Marines travel in protected Amtraks, spearheaded by armored assault guns. The Marines are met with sporadic fire and an open expanse of black volcanic ash that quickly bogs down both man and machine.
There are so many of them. I saw their numbers swell from several hundred to a few thousand.
But the bombardment has worked. The Japanese fire falls away. However, the advanced units still struggle to get just 300 meters inland as the landing zone becomes congested. Then, the air and ground erupt. The Japanese spring their trap. Their carefully hidden batteries create a bloodbath. A vast array of artillery and huge mortars lob massive shells into the tightly packed Marines, causing carnage.
We were under a tremendous artillery barrage. I had a piece of shrapnel about the size of a small refrigerator that landed along the side of my shell hole.
The beaches were so full of men, boats, and vehicles that there was no way to miss them.
Military combat is often about learning what your opponent does. What he had figured out was that defending the beach was actually a critical mistake.
General Kuribayashi's troops remain concealed. But his gun batteries decimate the thousands of men now caught on the open beach. As the Japanese defenders on Iwo Jima fire on the Marines, American warships and circling planes quickly target them. They pulverize one gun emplacement. A few survivors escape, to the fury of their officer.
How dare you desert your post in the face of the enemy? The Supreme Commander has forbidden retreat. All hands would defend their posts to the death.
Their only alternative is execution. The beach fills with casualties, and those about to become casualties, usually with a devastating blast wound.
An injury either from explosive laid in the territory or very high velocity, very large caliber weapons being fired at them. It's also an environment that is